Welcome to Prospects to Pros, where we talk college football, the NFL, the draft, and everything in between. I'm Andy Staples, here with the Athletics draft guru, Dane Brugler, and we watched our games on Saturday. We watched our games on Sunday. We watched our games on Friday. We watched our games on Monday. This has been, Dane, this never stops. This is, my son, who is just a complete football nut, plays football and just starts his morning with Good Morning Football every day. And like Kyle Brandt's like a member of the family. He's like, Tuesday and Wednesday are the worst days of the week, Dad. There's no football on. I'm like, you can listen to Prospects to Pros.
There you go. Yeah. Well, and my son, he's big into the Slime Time on Nickelodeon Wednesday nights. So that saves him Wednesday nights. But yeah, totally agree. Going back to Thursday, we had a rookie stand out for the Chiefs with that pick six of Justin Herbert. We'll talk about him too. So yeah, it was I don't know that we didn't have that Texas-Alabama game over the weekend in college football. We didn't really have that marquee game. A lot of the players that, were high on the radar, CJ Stroud, he showed out. He looked good. Bijan Robinson kind of flexed his muscles. A lot of the players we expected to look good did look good over the weekend.
Well, but I think we can start Friday because we have a little theme. And this is something that you wrote about last week, and I think is a great theme for this show, because one of the things that I've had to covering college football, and by the way, if you want to hear me talk more about college football all week, you can go to the Andy Staples Show. Please download, subscribe, rate, review, just like you would for the Athletic Football Show feed. Is the transfer portal. We've had to talk a lot about the transfer portal and how it's changed the sport. It's changing the way people have to scout as well. But I thought the game on Friday night between Florida State and Louisville was a great example of that, because you had Jordan Travis, former Louisville quarterback, with the Seminoles. Now, he got injured in the game and had to come out, but there are two guys that really showed out in that game that I think are going to be on draft boards and are, potentially better off because they transferred, and they're at Florida State, where kind of, I don't know, it felt like Jermaine Johnson last year was the patron saint of the transfer portal. He leaves Georgia, where he was a good player. And first of all, it explains how unfair that Georgia defense was last year, that Jermaine Johnson was a rotation guy. He goes to Florida State to prove he's an every down guy. He becomes a first rounder. Well, the guy this year at Florida State like that is Jared Verse. He was at Albany. He was an Albany Dane. And here's what happened with Jared Verse. So basically, Albany played Syracuse in one of those bye games last year. Syracuse pays Albany a bunch of money to come lose to them. And every team that played Syracuse watched the Syracuse-Albany game as they were scouting Syracuse and were like, who the hell is this guy on Albany? And that's exactly what the Florida State coaches did. And there were multiple other staffs that did the same thing. So Jared Verse was like the hot name in the transfer portal. He's been fantastic already this year. He got injured. He hurt his knee and was on crutches in a boot after the game. But Mike Norvell, the Florida State coach, has said, usually he'll say if a guy's out for the year, and he's being pretty like, I can't talk about injuries. So hopefully that means that we'll get to see Jared Verse again this season. The other guy at Florida State that just showed out, who was somewhere else, was Johnny Wilson. He was at Arizona State, 6'7" wide receiver. And Dane, I'm curious about this, because we've actually seen this before from Florida State with Kelvin Benjamin, a guy that big. Is 6'7"? How do NFL teams feel about that kind of jumbo size in a receiver?
Well, I mean, obviously you have to have the athleticism to pair with it in order to beat coverage at the NFL level. And Johnny Wilson, he tore up the Louisville secondary, and that's a secondary. They've got some NFL guys. I mean, Keitrell Clark, number 13, he's a top 3, top 5 senior corner, probably a 3rd or 4th round pick. And Johnny Wilson, he cooked him multiple times. The one he forced Clark to just tackle him down before the catch was even made, an easy PI penalty. But Wilson, it's not just size with him. He does a really nice job with his footwork. So especially those one-cut routes, the slants, posts, where he can collect himself, cut, go. He accelerates off his plant foot, so gains a little bit extra separation. And he's got that catch radius with the length where he can pull balls off of shoe tops. He can steal the ball away from defenders. So there's something there with Wilson, and now it's all about, okay, what does he do the rest of the year in terms of sustaining this type of production, this type of impact? Because at Arizona State, I don't know that we necessarily saw this. It was something where the big issue was the focus drops. That's not something that showed up in this game, at least. So can he sustain this level of production, this level of impact? That's what we'll be looking for from Johnny Wilson. And then I'm glad you brought up Jared Verse. Anytime I get a chance to gush about Verse, I'm gonna take it, because this guy he's so much fun to watch. The energy he brings off the edge. He's athletic. He's very active. He's very physical, so he can attack blockers, but he can go around you. He'll go through you. He forces holding calls. The speed to power move is really impressive. So, I mean, they're more missed tackles in the backfield than you want to see. Sometimes he's a little too energetic, needs to control himself. But this guy is a lot of fun, and he's a redshirt junior, so he'll have an NFL decision to make, just like Johnny Wilson after this season. But two guys that, like you said, have used the transfer portal and are making it pay off. And you brought up Jermaine Johnson. I mean, there were 4 players who were drafted top 50 last year who transferred in their final year in college and probably weren't going to be drafted that high if they didn't transfer. Jamison Williams going from Ohio State to Alabama. I mean, the talent's the talent, but if he didn't have that level of impact because he was just a part of a rotation at Ohio State, who knows what his
and you're seeing now. I mean, we're going to talk about Garrett Wilson later in the NFL, but we know what Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave were, and you're seeing Jackson Smith-Njigba and Marvin Harrison Jr. at Ohio State. So that's Jamison Williams was kind of stuck in that, and he could have been the 5th best receiver in the country, but might have been the 5th best receiver in that room, if that makes sense.
Exactly. And that's why, utilizing the transfer portal, it's something that it gives these players a chance to really, and there are times where I feel bad for coaches who, they find a Jared Verse and you bring him to Albany, you develop him, you put in so much time with this player only for him to move on to greener pastures. And so you feel for some of those lower level programs who do a lot of the work, but you also feel good for the player because he's getting more exposure.
It's not the player's fault he was under recruited.
Right, exactly. So, it's the main takeaway is you feel good for the player because, a guy like Jamison Williams, there were, Kenneth Walker last year going to Michigan State and doing what he did, becoming a top 50 pick. Arnold Ebiketie.
He was at a pretty good program. It just that offense and it didn't for whatever reason, Kenneth Walker and Wake Forest didn't work together.
Right. But I mean, there are plenty of success stories. And in this draft, it's going to become the new norm where these players will go to a different program. And for some of these guys, it's as simple as, take Charlie Jones, for example, that anemic Iowa offense that can't do anything. A guy like Charlie Jones he's lost. He transfers to Purdue, who they love to put the ball up in the air. And when you've got a quarterback like Adrian O'Connell, who, by the way, they have that connection with Charlie. You can't watch a Purdue game without them mentioning that connection from their trial. But, it's something that Charlie Jones, he's got almost double the amount of targets through 3 games that he had in 2 years at Iowa. So opportunity is the main takeaway here with these guys in the transfer portal that are going to new teams, and NFL teams are taking notice.
Well, so let's talk. We talked Johnny Wilson. There's another guy, because this is sort of an interesting theme, and I want to get your take on how scouts and GMs and front offices handle this. So Johnny Wilson left a dumpster fire behind at Arizona State. Right. It was a terrible situation. Herm Edwards just got fired this past weekend. He was in trouble the entire time, and you knew something was going to happen there. There's another guy, and it's somebody you highlighted over the weekend, Christian Gonzalez, who's the corner at Oregon now. He was at Colorado last year. Now, he kind of followed his DBs coach to Oregon when Oregon's new staff came together. Dan Lanning got hired there, and he puts his staff together. So Christian winds up going to Oregon, which, by the way, corner was a huge position of need for the Ducks this year. They needed somebody they could drop in and play right away. But Christian looked great. Oregon looked fantastic. They destroyed BYU. And I know everybody watched that Georgia game and sort of wrote off Oregon. I'm telling you right now, Oregon's going to be a good team in the Pac-12 this year. Christian Gonzalez is going to be one of the best corners in the country this year. For Christian Gonzalez, for Johnny Wilson, How much does it help that they left a terrible coaching situation where people are going to get fired? Because like Colorado, the AD put out a statement this week, like, if you ingrates had given us more money, we could have already fired Carl Rell and bought him out. But you haven't. So give us some money. But Christian Gonzalez now in a stable situation at Oregon, Johnny Wilson in a stable situation at Florida State, where it feels like they can be highlighted more and are not playing on terrible teams.
Yeah, like a case like Christian Gonzalez, he committed to Mel Tucker at Colorado.
Yeah.
So, it's a different coaching staff.
And Mel knows what he's looking for.
Right. A different scheme, like that's a part of the college football that, they tell you not to commit to a coach because there's a good chance he's not going to be there by the time you leave the program. You commit to the program and all that, but it's hard. It's hard to follow through with that because you want to commit to the guys that are going to be developing you, and you're going to be playing in their scheme, and they've got an idea for who you're going to be as a player 2-3 years from now. And so for a guy like Christian Gonzalez, yeah, he escapes that in Colorado where they just don't have a lot going on, and he goes to Oregon where playing with Dan Lanning. Dan Lanning has produced multiple high early round corners. When you talk about Stokes doing a nice job with the Packers,
Tyson Campbell,
the Jaguars, exactly. I mean, Keely Ringo will be a top prospect this year, so. Dan Lanning has a little bit better idea of what he's doing across the defense, and Christian Gonzalez is with that talent. He has legitimate chance to be the top corner in this draft with the size, the athleticism. I mean, you watch some of the tape and you see Jeffrey Okudah. You see why he was the number one corner a couple of years ago coming out of Ohio State with that size, his ability to cover. So against BYU, Jaron Hall had, I think, 29 completions against Oregon. Only one of them was against the guy that Christian Gonzalez was covering, and it was a short gain, wasn't a big play. So he had 2 pass breakups. It was a really good showing. And against Georgia in the opener, Gonzalez gave up a touchdown. There were times where you could tell, okay, this guy's still a redshirt sophomore. He's still learning a few things, but the traits, and that's what NFL teams are drafting. They're drafting the traits. That's what they're going after. And you're seeing a guy that's playing with a lot more confidence. And I thought he played with confidence at Colorado, but now under this new coaching staff, he's playing with a ton more confidence. And I think that's one of the differences, I think, between going where he was and now with this new coaching staff with the Ducks.
So how much explanation is required by the prospect's agent, when they are coming from a program where maybe there's been a coaching change or just things went badly and the team stunk? The player was good, but probably not as good as they would have looked on a better team.
Right. And each case is so individual. With a guy like Jamison Williams, it was pretty easy. It was, just I want to see more targets. Or Jermaine Johnson, who, Jermaine Johnson had a great reason where, I bet on myself.
It was very simple. Yeah.
I want to be the alpha, and I'm gonna bet on myself that I will be the alpha in this. He was the ACC Defensive Player of the Year, and he was outstanding. So that's where it pays off. And and a guy like Christian Gonzalez, I think it's as simple as I want to go to a coaching staff that I know is developing me. I know I have the talent. I want to go to a situation where I know I'm at my best. I'm going to be challenged. I'm going to get the most out of my potential. And so I think it's as simple as that for a lot of these guys. Jared Verse, it's about playing against better competition, going from the FCS level, playing lower competition, facing offensive tackles that are going to be future dentists, and going up against some tackles that'll be playing in the NFL. So I for each one of these guys, it's so individual, but each one has a story, each one has their journey, and it's paying off for a lot of these guys.
So non-transfers, anybody, transfer or not, anybody else flash for you over the weekend?
Well, I think that, he actually is another transfer that I didn't want to talk about. That's Osiris Torrance, Florida. Coming from, followed Billy Napier from Louisiana to Florida. He's been outstanding at right guard. Just a people mover in the run game. He's getting the job done in pass protection. Really impressive to watch him play. So another transfer that's getting it done, which is good to see. The question was, okay, he could do it in the Sun Belt, but could he do it in the SEC? And, we've seen Louisiana produce some offensive linemen. Robert Hunt a couple years ago was, I think, the 39th overall pick. Torrance has a chance to be higher than that. He has a legitimate chance to push for the first round. That's how scouts are talking about him. So, as long as he keeps this up in terms of playing at a high level in the SEC, like we've seen. So, he's been a good guy. He's been a guy that's been fun to watch. Watching Texas A&M and Miami that game, A&M offense, I don't know, maybe you can explain more what's going on there. I don't know. But
remember how I said listen to the Andy Staples show? We had about 2 full shows on the A&M and Iowa offenses last week and explaining exactly what is wrong there.
Yeah, but I mean, watching that A&M offense, at least they do have some playmakers, specifically Aidan, the running back, who, I mean, all you have to do, watch the Miami Dolphins, and what they're doing at wide receiver with Jaylen Waddle and Tyreek Hill and all the speed they have there. That's what NFL teams are going to be looking for. And Aidan, hey, that's what he brings. I mean, he is a legitimate track star out there on the football field, whether he's a running back, you're getting him the football as a receiver. He's a weapon. And so, A&M, they're smart to get the football as many times as they can. They did that against Miami, and I think that really ended up being the difference for them as they won that game.
It did because, Tyler Van Dyke, not very accurate on the other side. Now, he did have receivers dropping balls all over the place, but A-Chain is Texas A&M's best weapon. The other one that they have that's very good that I thought they did a little bit with him, but they should be doing more is Ainias Smith, who I actually think he's a third down back in the NFL. That's what he came as a receiver. The first year he was there, all of their running backs transferred before the bowl game. So he offered to move to running back. Was actually very effective as a running back. Can play both. He's just one of those guys that you just put on the field. You can move him around. He's going to do exactly what you need him to do. He's going to make plays. And so I feel like they need to kind of let him be Max Johnson's security blanket and then find ways to feed A-Chain to create big plays, because they've not really been able to develop anybody to stretch the defense yet. The idea is they want Evan Stewart, the receiver, to be that guy. He was suspended for that game, so we'll see what happens with that bunch. But it's just that offense is hard to watch. It is. Now, Miami's offense was pretty hard to watch as well, and Van Dyke has got to be able to hit receivers that are open, and then those guys have to be able to catch the ball. That's just all there is to it.
Yeah, and I mean he's missing his top receiver, and so that hurts. Yeah, but I mean he's playing like a sophomore. I think it's they can't all be C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young won the Heisman as a sophomore. They're not all going to look or play at a high level just in their second year on the field. And I think we see that with Van Dyke. There's still a lot of learning he has to do, and that's why I didn't put him in my top 50 in August. I just didn't think he was ready for that. He's not quite there, but I mean, you see the talent, you see the ability that he has. It's just a matter of being consistent on the football field and playing within himself. I mean, obviously with the new coaching staff, there's going to be some learning adjustments there. I thought the game went maybe like we thought, where both teams weren't going to look great, but at the end, A&M just has more talent at the moment. So, we'll see how Miami and Van Dyke does the rest of the ACC schedule.
Another quarterback and transfer that I wanted to ask you about, because he's looked amazing the first few weeks in his new environment, is Michael Penix Jr. He played at Indiana his first 3 years. He's at Washington now and just looks great. Kalen DeBoer was his OC at Indiana for one of those years. That's the head coach at Washington now. They're reunited. But with Penix and I don't know how much of an NFL prospect Penix would be under any circumstances, but I'm just curious from a talent scouting perspective to know what this means. He's had 3 consecutive season-ending injuries that derailed him at Indiana. Basically, he just needed to change his scenery, and then so that's why he went to Washington. But when a guy has that kind of injury history, are they just going to have to get in a camp and show what they can do? Are they going to be on anybody's board at all?
Yeah, and it just comes down to, and this is why teams spend so much money on the medicals and team doctors and all that kind of stuff. They'll go to the combine. Each team does it a little bit differently, but most teams have, just like a grading system where, 1, 2, 3, or 4. If the injuries are older and there's no sign of lasting, lingering effects, then he's going to be a 1 or a 2. But if some of these things are, this is going to pop up again, or he's going to be prone to injury. Okay, then we're talking 3 or a 4, and it might drop a player or take him off a team's board entirely. And so with a guy like Penix, we don't really know at this point just how much that's going to affect it. But it is good to see him performing like he is. He's 3 games, all 3 have been over 300 yards passing. He's got 10 touchdowns, 1 interception through the air, and against Michigan State on Saturday. He was outstanding. And it was something in Indiana where it was really inconsistent. Even that it was the 2020 year where I think he really, because that was the year they beat Penn State.
Penn State. He had the reach on the goal line. Yeah.
Even that year, he was only completing like 55, 56% of his passes.
That Penn State game was a great example. He was horrible for 3.5 quarters. And just lights out for the last drive of regulation and for the 2 overtime. So it is it's a strange situation, but he looks like a different person, and that I do wonder how that works because his injury history is pretty gnarly. So we'll see what he does, but I'm happy to see him doing really well. Let's talk about the guys that just got drafted that are in the NFL now. A guy we met him and his entire family. They are a lot of tall, good-looking people, the Hutchinsons. Aidan Hutchinson was dominant against Washington on Sunday. I felt like I was watching Red Zone, and I felt like every time that game popped up, I was watching him just run the arc and hammer somebody.
Yeah, we talk so much pre-draft about Hutchinson and, is he doesn't have the longest arms. Is he already tapped out? And even if he is close to tapped out in terms of what he is, in terms of upside and getting that much better, he's still really good right now. And, we're seeing it right away. The coaches said afterwards, he's exactly what we thought. And that shouldn't really be a surprise to anybody. This is a guy that the energy he brings off the edge is so impressive. Quickness, power, skilled hand play. He can be disruptive versus the pass, versus the run. He's scheme proof. I don't care where you want to play him. You want to stand him up. You want to kick him inside. This guy has shown he can be disruptive from a lot of different alignments. And so you see the foot, the lower body agility. You see the hand technique. There's a lot of things where you just check the box. And we're seeing it on the field. For the Lions, 6 tackles, 3 sacks. Love to see it from Hutch.
This is one of those where under normal circumstances, because he was taking second and the guy taking first plays a similar position, where you go, well, the Jaguars blew it, but Trevor Walker looked pretty great against the Colts too.
Yeah, well, and really, you look at both their first-round picks with Devin Lloyd, the linebacker out of Utah. It was kind of confusing at the time. Like, they're just collecting these linebackers.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, but the Jaguars they want to build something in that front seven and on that defense. And hey, they shut out the Colts. They're doing something right. The Jaguars all of a sudden, they're going to make some noise in the AFC South this year. The Colts are not playing well at all. The Titans look like they're they're more pretender than contender. And so it's just that division looks like it's going to be for the taking for an upstart like the Jaguars with the way Trevor Lawrence is playing. And the defense has been playing really well. Trevon Walker, you could do so many things with a guy like this. We talked about him last week, 6'5", 270 pounds, but his athleticism, his length, you want to use him on the edge. You want to use him in the twist game. You want to use him on the inside, drop him in space. He can do all those things and do them at a high level. And, kind of the reason he went 1 and not Hutchinson is because Walker does have upside where, you can see him. He's going to get better. The more he plays, the more he sees all the different things that you could do with a talent like this. And this is why, we're banging the drum on Trevon Walker all last fall, all throughout the draft process, as this guy is legit, is you bet on the traits. And Trevon Walker freaky trace. So the Jaguars, they got something brewing down there in Jacksonville.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting. I do want to. There's a rookie who when I saw this play, I was like, oh, Dane and I are going to have to talk about him, and it's not going to be good. But I think we can actually use this to absolve him a little bit. Jaylen Armour-Davis, rookie corner out of Alabama, plays for the Ravens.
Yep.
If you watch the Dolphins come back against the Ravens on Sunday, then you saw Tyreek Hill just blow by Jaylen Armour-Davis and catch a long touchdown pass as the help put the Dolphins back in the game. John Harbaugh came out. It's not his fault. Clearly, Armour-Davis thought he was playing zone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? He was. The safety was playing wrong. The safety played that play wrong. Should have been back there. And so, Jaylen Armour-Davis, we apologize in advance.
Well, that was part of the book on Armour-Davis coming out was because he was a 1-year starter at Alabama this past year. Had okay production. He had 3 picks last year. You could see the talent start to come out, but there was a lot of football that he needed to play to really understand what offenses are doing. And we mentioned Miami's offense, the speed. That as a defensive back, that scares the heck out of you. I mean, it's hard to be confident going up against that type of speed. So you're
I'm going to give Mike McDonald a little more credit because that's the thing. Like when you see that play, you're like, did you leave a rookie alone on Tyreek Hill ISO'd on the top of a formation? Like, really?
Well, and they're playing a lot of. I mean, Kyle Hamilton's getting. He's playing a lot for that defense, and so they're playing with some young dudes out there. And I mean, they're trusting it's sink or swim. And so they're credit to that defense for playing these young guys and sticking with them. But yeah, it's when you're playing an offense like Miami's and that type of speed. It's tough. Armour-Davis still developing in areas. But yeah, I mean, I think he's at least holding his own. And by the way, one guy that we talked about is, not sure what's going on last week, but a rookie who I thought played outstanding week 2, Cole Strange, for that Patriots offensive line. Watching him go up against Cam Hayward. I mean, Cam Hayward's been in the league 10 years. He's a Pro Bowler, All-Pro. And Cole Strange more than held his own at the point of attack. You see that strength. You see the quickness. I mean, I thought he was really impressive in week 2 with that assignment and what he was asked to do.
Now, I will say that game was a little like watching Iowa versus Texas A&M.
Yeah, it was terrible. Now, one game that we do have to talk about too, just for the sheer amount of rookies that were making plays, the Browns and the Jets. That was Garrett Wilson. I mean, he was my top receiver, which, it's going to be fun to kind of look back and Drake London, who also had a touchdown. And Drake London, the Falcons are force feeding him the football. He's been targeted on 37% of his routes so far in 2 games.
I'm not sure that they know they still have Kyle Pitts. Like, just because you drafted him last year doesn't mean you can't throw to him this year.
Did you see that quote by Arthur Smith after they get about, sorry, this isn't fantasy football? I mean, what is fantasy football?
You drafted him in the first round last year. Use him.
Fourth overall. You've got a guy that is a mismatch weapon, and you're going to call out fantasy football as, no. I mean, this is you've got such a weapon at your
with Waddle and Hill playing them off to scare the hell out of defenses. Like, you could do that with Drake London and Kyle Pitts for sure.
No, there's no doubt. So yeah, and it's Drake London. He's doing a nice job. I mean, he's getting a lot of opportunities and he's taking advantage. You see, exactly what we saw at USC: the size, the athleticism. It's been impressive so far.
By the way, Dane, I'm really impressed with the filibuster to get away from the Browns' collapse. I appreciate that, but we're gonna have to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to talk about. I mean, since the Browns came back in '99, and they've lost a lot of football games. This had to have been the worst loss they have had since they came back to the league, without a doubt.
Worst loss not involving John Elway in Browns history?
I mean, my knowledge only goes back
Dwayne
so
Rudd
far,
game.
but
Dwayne Rudd
that
game.
yeah,
Where's it? Okay.
that's another home opener, by the way, for the Browns. I mean, that's definitely up there. But at least that was just one player making a bonehead move. This, I mean, if you want to blame the offense for scoring that touchdown and not going in, whatever, fine. I'm not going to blame Nick Chubb for that loss. How about let's blame the defense for letting that Corey Davis touchdown happen? How about we blame special teams for that onside kick? Amari Cooper had a good game on offense and kind of made a little bit of a business decision on that onside kick. And then down the stretch, I mean, Garrett Wilson did what he wanted. And this is the reason Garrett Wilson was my top receiver in last year's draft is because he makes the playbook come alive. His athleticism, his ability to play bigger than he is, it's so impressive. And he did that on multiple occasions. The one touchdown he had earlier in the game against Martin Emerson, another rookie, he cooked him at the line, easy corner route. I mean, it was something that rookie or not, I mean, that was impressive from Garrett Wilson. In another rookie in that game, by the way, Cade York missed the extra point after that Nick Chubb touchdown.
We
so
spent a whole show on Cade York last week. Come on.
He went from hero to, okay, yeah, who's this rookie again? And ended up being the difference, 31-30. They lost the game. So, yeah, there were a lot of, I mean, Breece Hall had a touchdown in this game.
Mm-hmm. Gardner got nicked up, came back, and it looks like he's doing all right for the Jets.
He did well. He did well. He I think gave up maybe 4 catches, but he did it overall, did a nice job. Perrion Winfrey did not play because of some disciplinary issues. So plenty of rookie action to talk about in that Jets Brown game.
Well, and the Jets seem to just, I hate to say, and it's weird because you got Mekhi Becton out, but you look at the way they've drafted recently, they could be fairly competent.
Yeah, well, if they're gonna get quarterback play like they did from Joe Flacco, then I mean the defense is still an issue. Jacoby Brissett looked like a capable NFL starter, and maybe he is, but the Jets made him look, I think, a little bit better than he is. But yeah, on offense, if they're going to play the way that they've been playing, the play calling I thought was outstanding. The way they used Garrett Wilson was, and by the way, if you're in a fantasy league and Garrett Wilson's out there as a free agent, go get him. He leads or I think he's tied with Jamar Chase for the most end zone targets in the league. So they want to get him to football, especially when they get down towards the red zone. He had 8 catches against the Browns. 6 were first downs. The other 2 were touchdowns. So this guy is making plays when he gets his hands on the ball. So yeah, I mean the Jets. It'll be interesting when Zach Wilson comes back. Probably it's going to be either week 4 or week 5. It looks like they're waiting till he's fully healthy. What's the sophomore year going to look like? Is he going to take that jump? Is he going to be able to see things quicker? That was always the thing with him last year as a rookie, is just the processing and the game being so fast compared to what he played with at BYU. Okay, is things slowed down for him at all? And so getting Zach Wilson back will be really interesting to see how this offense will look. Do they take a noticeably step down compared to what they had with Joe Flacco, or is Zach Wilson able to continue that momentum that they've got going with these rookies, with Breece Hall, with Garrett Wilson, and everybody else on that offense?
Yeah, it will be fascinating. Now maybe the biggest play, well, I don't know. It's hard to say with those big comebacks, but one of the biggest plays of the weekend happened Thursday night, involved a rookie. The pick 6 by Jaylen Watson, former Wazoo Cougar. Gerald Everett tapping his helmet once out of the game, kind of loafs it on the route, and Watson jumps the route. And I mean, that turned the thing. And I realized that Justin Herbert is getting banged up, had a lot to do with everything too. But that with the Chiefs, I feel like we talk about Patrick Mahomes, we talk about what they're doing offensively to overcome not having Tyreek Hill and the free agents they signed for those reasons. But defensively, they are going to have to be really good. I mean, you saw Josh Allen last night. For the Chiefs to get where they want to go, like, that defense better be great.
Yeah, and they're doing it with some young guys. I mean, Trent McDuffie was the guy, the corner they drafted in the first round.
Washington. They like those Pac-12 guys.
Yeah, apparently. I was a big fan of Trent McDuffie coming out. He was my second ranked corner. He's not the biggest, but the guy can, he understands how to play corner. But he was hurt in that game. And so he'll be out for a few weeks here. Jaylen Watson comes in, steps up, makes the play of the game. And, I tweeted this out right as it happened, but 3 years ago, he was working at Wendy's trying to figure out, okay, where am I playing my football next? And all the credit to him. At a high school, he was 2 years at JUCO, and then he actually signed with USC, but he didn't qualify academically. So goes back to Augusta, Georgia, working at Wendy's with his mom just to make ends meet, try to figure things out. Okay, what's my next move? He's able to sign with Washington State during the COVID year, so doesn't play a ton at that COVID year. And then last year, 2021, that's when he really boosts his stock as an NFL player. Ends up getting drafted 7th round, and he got his chance. And when you get your chance, you got to make the most of it. And he certainly did with that pick six. With really that's when the game changed. That's what it looked. I mean, if the Chargers score a touchdown there, obviously it's a huge swing compared to what it could have been. So all the credit to Jaylen Watson taking advantage of that opportunity. And hopefully he's able to keep it going this week, especially with McDuffie out. If Watson's able to kind of say, hey, I should be starting here. I'm more than just a flashy pick six. I can play consistent football.
Well, he can make a pick six in the NFL, and he can fix a Frosty machine. It's a pretty big skill set. Let's be honest.
It's true. It's true. Hey, we've all got our journeys, right? I mean, right. we all did our certain thing.
That's the thing. Some of these guys, and it's hard because sometimes stuff doesn't work out. You have a situation where it's grades or it's injuries or whatever. And a lot of times guys just are content to give up and say, well, I was great in high school. The guys that gut it out when it's not easy, when they don't just go straight to a big Power 5 school and have, all this fancy Nike gear in front of them, the ones that gut it out and figure out how to make it work for themselves, I have so much admiration for them, because when he's at Wendy's, when he's in JUCO, there's nobody coming to him going, well, you're going to be an NFL player someday, so we're going to make life easier for you. No, it's, you got to get your ass up and lift. You got to go to class. You got to do all this stuff. And there may be no payoff at the end of this. You just got to keep doing it. So
you got to be self-motivated. You've got to have a goal in mind that maybe is not attainable today or tomorrow, but down the line, if I do this, and this, that goal will be attainable. And that Jaylen Watson's a perfect example. And we see that a lot with guys that for one reason or another, they have to go a different route. They have to, a journey is not a straight line. It's a lot of zigs and a lot of zags. And so that's my favorite part about draft coverage and learning about these players, these prospects, is, it's no two journeys are the same. They're all different with what they have to face, what adversities, and what they did to overcome that. So, kudos to Watson. He had his, a really, 15 minutes of fame, and hopefully he's able to sustain that.
Well, hey, Malcolm Butler worked at Popeyes and then made the most important interception maybe in Super Bowl history. So this is what happens. And so I'm happy to see that. We got a little new segment that we want to break in this week, and it's called Defend the Take. And, Dane and I known for our just scalding hot takes all the time, but we're trying to work on that. We're in the podcast game here. This medium requires some takes that are a little more spicy than our usual ones. So, Dane, why don't you go first?
Yeah, and this is fun, and I think it's important because I've had talks with like scouts and GMs before where they've yelled at me and said, get off the fence, or no, that's not, be definitive with what you're saying and what you're seeing. And so it's important. And so, we'll see how spicy we go with these takes, but my take, and honestly, I didn't think this was a hot take until I tweeted it, but my take is Marvin Harrison would be the clear wide receiver 1 in this draft class if he were eligible. Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously the son of Hall of Famer Marvin Harrison, all those years with the Colts, doing some impressive things with Ohio State right now. With Jackson Smith and Jigba, sidelined with the injury. Marvin Harrison Jr. has stepped up. He has been, especially the last 2 games, he has been just lights out. You see the athleticism, you see the size. He has prototypical X traits with the athleticism. He might not be a 4.3 guy, but he's fast enough. He can beat coverage in different ways. His ball skills are freaky. I tweeted the video of one of his touchdowns against Toledo. Being able to, the defender's just tugging at him the entire way. He's able to isolate the football, get 2 feet in, good in the NFL. Now, part of this take is Marvin Harrison Jr. is awesome, a future top 10 pick in the NFL draft. Again, he's not eligible. He's only a true sophomore.
It's more about the class itself.
Exactly. The wide receiver class is, I think there's a lot of fans and media, I think, are higher on the wide receivers this year than most scouts and teams that I've talked to. Jackson Smith-Njigba is a really good player. He's just not a lock top 20 pick like a lot of people want him, think that he is. Keyshawn Bote is a really talented player and not a lock top 20 pick. And there's a lot of other guys that I like in this group. Quentin Johnson from TCU is really talented. Cedric Tillman with Tennessee is a really good player. There's a lot of receivers that I think it's okay to be excited about, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be drafted top 20. And we had 6 receivers drafted in the top 20 last year. So it's something that we've seen a lot of receivers drafted early past few years. This year it might not happen.
Yeah, and that happens. These things are cyclical, and I do think there will be more often than not years where there's a lot of good receivers, just because the game has changed. Guys are playing 7-on-7 growing up. There's so many more reps for receivers available than there were 20 years ago. High school offenses are throwing the ball 50 times a game. It's a different world, but everything's cyclical. There'll be years with the D line's down. There'll be years when the receivers are down. And you're right. I'm looking, and it's interesting because the actual production, when you look at the leaderboard, is very different than the guys the draftniks really like. And that tells you there's not a super obvious person. And that's an opportunity. We were talking about Johnny Wilson earlier. That's an opportunity for a Johnny Wilson to maybe break in and be drafted significantly higher than he would have been in a much deeper receiving class. So that'll be one to watch, because, like we talked about Charlie Jones. Charlie Jones is a really good receiver, but he doesn't have the super traits that the NFL guys are. Like, he's very fast. He can be a return guy, but he's not a dominant wide receiver one probably in the NFL. Jordan Addison is the one that I think I'm curious to get your take on him, because obviously he can do a little bit of everything. Won the Biletnikoff last year. He's at USC. I didn't mean to bring up another transfer, but that's where we're at. So I am curious how you feel about him.
Yeah, and he's a guy that he didn't need to transfer to be a drafted top 40, top 50. I mean, that was going to happen if he stayed at Pitt or transferred. But now at USC, it's unlocking everything. I mean, you see the twitchiness that he plays with. He could be he can work all 3 levels, kind of like Garrett Wilson last year, where he could be a catch and go guy. He can win down the field. He has a speed where he can win over top coverages. So you see missed tackles all over when you get him involved in the quick game. There's a lot to like with Jordan Addison. And what we're seeing now with USC is, because at Pitt, he was primarily in the slot, and most of his targets were within 10 yards of line of scrimmage. I think with USC, we're seeing him they're using him a lot more throughout the formation, down the field. And that's what you want to see from him. Show that he's not just a guy that's going to win in the quick game. He is more than that. So he's never going to be a big guy. That's the body type's always going to be just a little bit not what you want. But, again, Garrett Wilson was another one of those where you kind of worry about the body type a little bit. So Jordan Addison, absolutely. He's going to be in the conversation to be, one of the first receivers drafted this year, and absolutely could be a first-round pick. And transferring to USC, could that have still happened if he stayed at Pitt? Sure. But transferring to USC in that offense is really helping unlock everything that he has to offer.
All right. I'm going to go with mine, which gets less spicy by the day, I feel like. But I said this last week, and I'm going to say it again. We talked about Anthony Richardson on this show. Dane has had him on his QB listings. Anthony Richardson at Florida is a class of 2024 draft prospect at the earliest. He is showing each week that he's not quite there yet reading defenses. This is his first year as the starter, and it's hard because we talk about traits versus production on this show. Traits, he's off the charts. He is absolutely. Somebody sent me a video of him dunking from the free throw line last week. Like he is probably the most athletic quarterback in the country, and he has a great arm, but he needs to learn to control the arm. He needs to learn to put the ball in the right place, not get spooked when he's playing a defense of superior athleticism. And you saw it against USF this weekend where Florida probably shouldn't have won that game, but they did. He did not show, like against Kentucky. It's one thing. There's a lot of NFL players on that Kentucky defense. Against USF, you should be able to pick them apart. And a lot of it is they don't have particularly great receivers at Florida, but he's got to figure out how to make that work. Yeah,
they've got enough. They got enough against
Pearsall. USF. Against USF, they have enough. Now against Tennessee, against Georgia, it's a different story. But here's the other piece of this. I don't know that we're going to get to see the full Anthony Richardson until later this season, or maybe not at all this season, because their backup quarterback, Jack Miller, who they went and got from Ohio State as a transfer, has been hurt. He had surgery on I believe his thumb and is out, and they're not looking at him being back until midseason. They are not going to cut Anthony Richardson loose on the ground until they're confident they have a backup quarterback that they feel safe putting in the game. And it's interesting because I remember Justin Herbert's senior year, they didn't like their backup situation at Oregon, and they didn't turn him loose until the Pac-12 championship game and the Rose Bowl. And it was a completely different offense when they did. The difference was Justin Herbert was a fourth-year starter, very adept at reading defenses, understood exactly what his role in the offense was. So we need to see, can Anthony Richardson grow into that quarterback? It's not going to happen this year, I don't think. I don't think, one, I want to see him fully turned loose for a little while before you have any idea what he is. But the running part of it doesn't even matter as an NFL prospect. That matters for a winning games at Florida. Like the running piece, escapability, yes, but that won't be you have to be able to throw the ball.
Right. And that's why you're going to be drafted as high as he has the potential to be drafted. And look, if you and I know that, where they're going to be a little more conservative with him running the football, defenses know that. And that's just going to make, because they're not going to be as worried about that. So they're going to be playing, forcing him to beat them with his arm. And so far, it is just so weird because against Utah, and Utah, I think they're a good defense. I don't know how good, but they're at least, I feel comfortable saying they're a good defense. Anthony Richardson, I mean, he was so impressive in that season opening game. If the draft was the next day, he would have been a number one overall pick. I mean, I
almost feel like when they're in a desperate situation, he just sort of relaxes. Because if you go back to the LSU game last year, when he got put in the game and they were just way behind and it looked hopeless, he's just letting it rip.
Yeah.
And it looked a lot better than it has looked the last couple games.
His confidence just was so shook against Kentucky. And it's just a snowball effect that probably carried with him into the South Florida game. So now you've got coming up, Tennessee, and you're about to hit the meat of the SEC schedule. They have Alabama on the schedule this year. I think they do.
No, they don't. They don't. Okay. So yeah, they go to Texas A&M. They go to Texas A&M, and that's a bunch of athletes. No, the problem is going to be like this week. Tennessee's defense is not going to be as good as Kentucky's defense was, but Tennessee's offense is going to score a bunch of points. So you better be able to keep up, or you're in trouble. So I'll be curious to see what he does, because he's going to be put in a situation where he may have to match score for score Hendon Hooker and company. And Hendon Hooker, while not a big NFL prospect, has proven to be a very good college quarterback at Tennessee.
Yeah.
Yet another transfer, by the way.
Virginia Tech. That's right. Exactly. So Yeah, the Anthony Richardson conversation is tough because it's almost like your opinion's going to change week to week, but I mean I agree with your take at this point with what he's shown. He has no business entering the 2023 NFL draft, and if he did, I mean, forget just in terms of draft positioning and where you're drafted. In terms of setting him up for the long term, he needs to go back to school and get as many more reps as he can so he can develop both physically and mentally to be the best passer that he could be before he goes to the NFL, which is proven time and time again. It is not a developmental league. Teams are going to be only so patient with you. And it doesn't matter where you're drafted. Their teams are only going to be so patient. And with GMs and head coaches changing jobs all the time, that influences things. So I think that take makes a lot of sense based off of what Anthony Richardson has put on film here the last 2 weeks.
Well, we got a lot more film coming. It starts Thursday and it runs through the weekend. And then we'll be back here to process it all on Prospects to Pros. Dane,
we got
what are we doing?
Ohio State, Wisconsin.
Yeah, we got that.
Yeah, that's going to be the big one, I think, because I want to see CJ Stroud against that Jim Leonhard-led defense. That'll be big. Mm-hmm. Maybe some ribs this weekend.
I like it. I like it. I mean, I did a pork butt last Friday and ate off that all weekend. So
love pork. Pork butts they're so forgiving. They're so, I mean, it's yeah. What's your smoker setup? You go with the offset. You've got a pellet smoker.
No, see, I'm the lazy one. I'm pellet. I was using a Big Green Egg, but when you got 94 podcasts to record and writing stories, and I wish I could do my own barrel offset, but sometimes you just be able to get it done. But I will say I had a rough day work wise last week at one point. And I called my wife. I'm like, this sucks. And then I call her back. I'm like, pulled pork sandwiches make everything better. It's just, it's so easy to cook, but then you shred it up. I was born in Columbia, South Carolina. So for the first 7 years of my life, I thought mustard-based barbecue sauce was what everyone ate. And usually when you say that, people are like, whoa. No. Pulled pork sandwich, a little mustard-based sauce, nothing better. Nothing in the world. So,
interesting. Yeah, no, and trust me, I used to be there with you where give me the smoker where you got to control the fire, you got to that's part of it. And now that I have 4 kids and it's okay, you know what? I'm gonna invest in a pellet smoker. Let's just make things a little bit easier. So and I can control it from my phone. Oh, okay, yeah. Now, change the temp here.
I still have my egg, and here's what I want to do. My birthday's coming up. I may do this for my birthday. Tomahawk ribeyes. You got to reverse sear those because of the thickness. And so you set up the pellet and you cook it to about 100 or 105 internal and have the egg going at like 600 degrees and take it off the pellet and just pop it on the egg 2-3 minutes aside and sear it. That is going to be heaven. And I will post pictures when I do that.
Yes, please do. That is maybe the best way to do a steak, period, is give it a little bit of that smoke, let it get it just up to temp, just probably right over 100, and then cook it to it doesn't need that much time on the green egg. I mean, you just want to get that sear because you don't want to get that internal higher than 125, 130. Because then it's even going to go a little bit higher once you let it rest for 5-10 minutes.
I'm actually a rare steak guy, so that probably is medium rare what I just said. So
right.
But I'll be watching. I want to see Maryland, Michigan, because I want to see Michigan against the team with a pulse. Everybody's just gaga over their offense, but again, I need to see it against somebody else. Clemson, Wake Forest, very interesting to me. DJ Uiagalelei. We're still waiting to see, is he going to wind up being the starting quarterback for the rest of the year? But Sam Hartman is back now for Wake Forest. I really like Sam Hartman. They've got some receivers that are worth watching. And so that'd be a fun one. Florida, Tennessee, obviously. I'd said Cedric Tillman, they're being a little cagey about his injury situation. So not entirely sure what we're going to see from him. One of my favorite guys, by the way, in this draft class, just because of his story. he was on a loaded high school team. He was Brevin Jordan, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who's UCLA starting quarterback now. There's another receiver. Speedy Naylor, who's with the Vikings now. He played at Michigan State. This is Bishop Gorman in Vegas. It's just a loaded team. Nobody wanted it. Nobody. Clay Helton was USC's head coach at the time, had come out to check on one of his commits, who was a linebacker for that team, sees Cedric and is like, you got to have a ton of offers, right? And Cedric's like, I have no offers. He's like, I had Hawaii and I had Hawaii and Nevada, and they bailed on me. And Clay's like, okay, I don't have any scholarships at USC, but my brother just got named the OC at Tennessee. I'm going to call him. And so he calls his brother Tyson, who was only at Tennessee for 1 year, but it was a big one for Cedric Tillman, because Tyson goes, okay, yeah, sure. I'll look at him. Looks at him. He's like, oh, this sounds great. And sure enough, 2-3 days before signing day, Tennessee has a player bail, a receiver bail on them, go to Florida State. Cedric Tillman gets the offer, and now you see first 1,000-yard receiver at Tennessee since Justin Hunter. So
wow. And Tillman can play. He's got size. He's physical. I mean, I've used the Nico Collins comparison. He's got a good chance to be the first senior receiver drafted. So no doubt he'll be a guy to watch in that game. And then one other game I did want to mention too, Thursday night, Illinois Chattanooga. Don't overlook this game, because Illinois. I've been watching a lot more Illinois tape than I thought I would. Chase Brown, this guy is so much fun to watch. He's turning himself into a draftable running back. Devin Witherspoon on defense at corner is playing himself into being a top 3, top 4 round type of guy. And then even Chattanooga, they've got a guy on that offensive line.
They had a first rounder last year.
They did, and McClendon Curtis could be. He won't be a first rounder. Well, I mean, I didn't think Cole Strange would be a first rounder, so you never know. But McClendon Curtis is a guy that should be drafted, and we'll see how he does against an Illinois, a Big Ten opponent. So a game on Thursday night. When you're watching Browns Steelers, maybe just flip over to that one, check out how that game's going too.
Yeah, and look, this would have a couple years ago. I'd have been like, watch out for the Mocs with the upset on this one. Brett Bielema has made Illinois a little more competent than that. So I'm very confident that the Illini will get it done. But yes, I do want to see those guys. And I can't wait to see Illinois in Big Ten play, because I think they're going to beat some teams that they're not supposed to. And I realize they did lose to Indiana, but if you ask the Illinois fans, that's the ref's fault. So have fun, everybody. We'll talk to you again next Wednesday.